Hey everybody, I'm trying to make this as quick as possible. My battery's low. But I was watching a show today about earthquakes, and they were talking about waves. The waves, the frequency waves that push out across the land, which are a result of an earthquake. And I started thinking about interference, and there's destructive interference and constructive interference with waves. If you picture a wave in the ocean, when two waves of a different size meet, little might happen, but when two waves that are similar in size meet, or the same size, they create what they call constructive interference, where the waves can basically double up their strength. Now, the same thing happens with what they call destructive interference, where two waves meet and cancel each other out. You can think of this as the same thing as in noise-canceling headphones. But there are some ideas that kind of flashed through my head when I thought about wave propagation, and it really got me into this idea that when a group of people, okay, let's get into brainwaves for a minute here, because we're talking light waves can cancel each other out as well. Now, when you're looking at a bubble and the way it has that iridescence, or like a mother of pearl, something that's mother of pearl, you have that iridescence that comes from it, and what that is that's from refracting and diffracting light, and you're picking up on certain waves as you move your view around, or as it moves around within the light, where it's canceling each other out and reinforcing different light waves. Now, my thought was that these same things probably happen with brainwaves. Now, they have two different thoughts on it now, that they're brainwaves and that they're what they call also neural oscillations, which they're using to differentiate the two. But brainwaves would be emanating from the brain, and science has finally recently had enough of a controlled environment and detailed enough instruments to be able to pick up on these brainwaves. And they do emanate from the brain. They do emanate from at least the human. So, imagine one of the theories goes that humans don't actually create their own thoughts, that the light enters the brain and the brain refracts the light into consciousness. Now, I buy into this in kind of a metaphoric sense, but there are... Now, if you have two people who are on the same wavelength, or we're on the same page, they're thinking the same thoughts, they'll reinforce each other. And when you have a large group of people, they will reinforce each other to the point where, in my opinion, that the brainwaves, what they're doing is they're constructively reinforcing each other. This is why when a group of people goes into a church and they pray really hard for someone or for something, they may be able to actually alter the outcome of it on a minute level. Now, we all know the whole world could sit and think about the universe and say, even if the entire world said focused on the moon disappearing, it's probably not going anywhere. However, this kind goes up to the macro, micro, where you have, humans can predict where planets will be, where the universe will be, the galaxy will be, when the galaxies will collide. They can predict down to the day and the minute when certain planets are going to conjoin and when all these astrological events are going to happen. Yet we still can't predict the weather a week in advance. And this is because of the unpredictability when you get to the minute level. And the unpredictability factor even extends beyond the weather, let's say, of the Earth, down into the subatomic realm, which is where quantum physics comes in, where we have atoms and quarks and suggestion, the double slit experiment, whether light's a wave or a particle. This stuff is fascinating, it really is. And when I started thinking about this propagation, I thought if a group of people are focusing on the same thing, then they're doing wave reinforcement, and their waves are reinforcing each other's ideas. So this is where positive thinking comes in. This is where it's so important, is because if we truly are emanating brainwaves, then they are on the same frequency as light and electromagnetism. Gamma, beta, alpha waves. And if those can reinforce each other and cancel each other out, then there's no reason to think that the human brainwaves couldn't do the same exact thing. So I'll read you this, if this is the right one. This was an interesting little... Okay. Now this is one I found, I took a few pictures of it because it was kind of fascinating. This is an article that I downloaded. Okay. Radio waves and brain waves are both forms of electromagnetic radiation, waves of energy that travel at the speed of light. The difference between brain waves, radio waves, and other EMF waves, such as visible light, X-rays, and gamma rays, lies in their frequency, that is, how often the waves peak and trough in a second. Radio waves, which include wireless transmission signals, as well as other natural signals in the same frequency, peak and trough roughly at 50 and 1,000 megahertz. That's 50 million and 1 billion oscillations per second. The human brain also emits waves, like when a person focuses her attention or remembers something. This activity fires thousands of neurons simultaneously at the same frequency, generating a wave, but at a rate closer to 10 to 100 cycles per second. Interference happens when two of the same or very similar waves bump into each other. This might happen when the signals from two radio stations, both broadcasting at 89.7 megahertz, from different cities bump into one another. The shape of the waves changes linearly. They add to and subtract from one another. And then it goes on to how brain waves are too weak to measure, but they're working on it. Now, I had some other stuff to read, but really I'm just going to go off my head because, you know, information is out there if people want it. My thoughts are like this. When certain waves of light or energy pass across each other, cancel each other out, or reinforce each other, such as when you throw two rocks in a pond and you watch the ripples go outward, but where they conjoin, there's a name for that, where it creates like a linear pattern where the two waves meet. There are other different forms and different spherical, systems where you can measure light and it refracts in these very odd shapes and patterns. It's my belief that this, in some way, shape, or form, can explain the consciousness of man, the purpose of life, the creation of the universe, and most of all, the hidden dimensions within. It could explain why we have these parallel universes and dimensions that we can't quite tap into yet sometimes seem to cross. We could have a universe that's creating interference waves and interference patterns, such as, this would go into string theory and many other of these ideas of the Higgs boson particle and all these different ideas about two paths of energy crossing and creating matter. And once in a while, these separate waves of different size might either cancel each other out or reinforce each other, and allowing us to kind of tap into this other dimension. I mean, trying to put it into language is impossible, but I'm doing the best I can. In my mind, I can kind of see it. I can visualize what I'm what I'm trying to explain. But you know, I'm sure those who are following me are still, you know, they know what I'm saying. It's too zen. It's too much to think about. But I really think that there's something to this. I really think that this has something to do with the word of God, what they talk about, which was the spoken word, the vibration, the light, the frequency. All of this ties together to try to explain to us in a metaphorical sense what life really is, which is nothing more than light. Kind of strange, because I had a dream 2 nights ago, and I woke up in a cold sweat that the sun went out. I was sitting in my room, or standing in my house talking to my wife, and all of a sudden the sun just went out. And in my dream, instantly I knew what the implications were. And of course I know the sun's not going to just go out. I mean, we'd be toast, but long before we knew it was out. But it's a dream that maybe kind of got me thinking about some of these issues, these deeper thoughts about light, and how light plays the ultimate role in human existence and all existence. Without it, there is nothing. There is just void, darkness. It leads one to wonder that if there were no stars at all, and all matter was dark, rock, had no phosphorescence, luminescence, how could you assume that anything existed whatsoever? Everything would be through feel. It's a completely different sense. And so I really believe that there is an energy force within the universe that's entering our brains, that's passing through us constantly. Similar to what they talk about, I think they're neutrinos, which just pass directly through the Earth, and that they set up these huge laboratories a mile underground in these old mine caverns with these huge lead walls and these giant pools with germanium atoms in it to try to see if these neutrinos would interact. And they call them WIMPs, weakly interacting mass particles, I believe. And they, you know, it just shows the dedication science has to finding the truth. And they really want to know. And if these things are passing through us and passing through the Earth, there are many forces and different things that are passing through us at all times. And when these things pass through our aura, they're reflecting through our conscious and creating our consciousness, just like a prism. Just like a prism through a crystal. And I hope that everyone's prism will be cast to the best of their ability. And try to reinforce those waves. Propagate those waves. Make those peaks match. And put your love into the world. Because it's all we got, folks.